Okay, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to make a presentation about my undergraduate study, a study about teaching LT pragmatics competence, no, a study of teachers' beliefs about teaching LT pragmatic competence insights into its value, methodology, and issues to be solved. Today, first of all, I would love to share my motivations for this study as an introduction. And then I will cover some of the previous studies quickly. And then I will show you my research questions. I had 3 research questions in this study. Before making conclusion, I will show you the methodology that I utilized and result and discussions. So in 2018, the new course of study was launched by NEXT, and Kubota, Iwasaki, and Ushiro analyzed that, and successful communications, according to them, successful communication should be authentic, pragmatic, and diverse. When I read this statement, I thought, well, maybe pragmatics should be more explored in order to make this statement realistic one. And from personal motivation, well, I am a user of English, German as foreign languages, and Japanese as a native language. And I faced so many miscommunications and communication breakdowns, especially in English, and more especially in German, I think. And I was wondering why it happened to me. I studied a lot about English grammar and authentic use as well, and also the completely different grammatical structure, especially in German. But still, I have faced so many miscommunications. And I have read a chapter called Pragmatics in a book of Applied Linguistics Introduction. And I realized that maybe because of the lack of pragmatic competence, I face many miscommunications. So I started having an interest in this area. So now I will very quickly see some of the literature, previous studies. Starting from Himes in 1972, communicative competence, and it has linguistic competence and performance. And in 2010, I very love this definition. Pragmatics bridges the gap between the system side of language and the use side, and relates both of them at the same time. And about second language pragmatics research, according to Brock and Nagasaka in 2005, teachability, they examined that about teachability of L2 pragmatic competence, suggesting 4 tips: sure, see, use, review, and experience. So thus far, a lot of studies related to teachability and learnability of L2 pragmatic competence. But I was wondering, how about teachers' beliefs? What teachers think, what teachers believe in, it's not kind of explored. So I used Google Translate and EBSCOhost. I typed teachers' beliefs and L2 pragmatics, and I only found 17 results there. Some of the one of the studies by Maslow, Babai, and Atai in 2019, they studied Iranian EFL teachers' pragmatic awareness, and they found out that few of them know its concept, and they are not aware of approaching the aspect of language use. I mean, pragmatic aspect of language use. And I was wondering, why is there only a few research? According to Valenka in 2011, possible participants, so in this case, English educators, do not know the concept of pragmatics or lack of confidence in teaching pragmatics as well. And according to Sasajima in 2014, teachers are busy to participate in that kind of survey. And also it is too difficult to verbalize what is on their mind and what they believe in. So, and also there are not so many methodologies for doing that kind of survey. These are the causes, possible causes for the few research studies about teachers' beliefs about LD pragmatics. So, so because of these information and previous studies, I thought of 3 research questions. My first research question was, how do English educators view the value of teaching LD pragmatic competence in EFL classrooms? My second research question was, how do English educators help their students to boost their LD pragmatic competence, and why do they do it that way? And the last research question was, what issues related to second language pragmatic competence do English educators think still remain, and how do they approach them? I did interview with 8 JALT SIG members, and thank you so much for the participation. Without your participation, I could not have done this survey, so thank you so much. 7 of them are from the US, the UK, and Canada, and 1 of them is from Japan. And we used Zoom, and I used Otta AI for transcription. I did deductive coding for coding process, and I used grounded theory and the constant comparative method for data analysis. I asked, well, approximately 8 questions to each participant. My question part was divided into 2 parts. My first part was personal background, their personal background, I mean, because as I studied about teachers' beliefs, I thought their experiences of teaching English and also academic background can be strongly connected to their their beliefs. So I asked it. And my second part was about LD pragmatic competence instruction in EFL classrooms. So I asked something like, have you ever taught English class which focused on teaching LD pragmatic competence? Or do you think whether LD pragmatic instruction should be more introduced or not? Or the elements that shape their beliefs about pragmatics. Actually, I after all presentations, interviews, I thought I kind of regret, because it was such a huge question, big question. Like I I asked what elements that shaped your beliefs about pragmatics, and all the participants were kind of well, Saki, it is kind of a question. But anyway, yeah, now I will move on to the results and discussion part. My first research question was about teachers' beliefs and values of teaching LD pragmatic competence. My first research question was, how do English educators view the value of teaching second language pragmatic competence in EFL classrooms? All of the participants said it is very important to teach pragmatics in EFL context. For example, T3 said, I really view languages as centered around pragmatics. Every component of language relates to pragmatics. And T7 said, the purpose of pragmatics is to strengthen our understanding of pragmatics Our understanding of pragmatics is to strengthen relationships. I think it's very important to build some strong connections to people or relationship. And T6 said, I think pragmatics is very central to communicative competence. So they think, all of them think that it is very important to teach pragmatics aspect of English. And also I found that most of the participants have hope for students to be able to do something with English. T8 said, when your senpai says, let's go out for a drink, you don't know how to say no, and so you have to say yes. I want them to have that, to be able to say no. So Japanese learners of English want to say no, but they don't know how to say no. So he wants them to be able to do that with English. And T6 shared her experience with her students. She asked one of her students coming from overseas, and she asked the advice, or what can her student give advice to her friends who will go to overseas as well. And she said, don't complain. And T6 thought possibly the students tried to complain, but they didn't know how to complain properly. But you have to know how to complain. So some of the participants want their students to know how to blah blah blah. So how to blah 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 in English. So there are their hope for students to be able to do something, and which requires pragmatic awareness and ability. And regarding their beliefs, I found that their backgrounds also has strong connections to their beliefs. An academic background, personal background, and career background. Since I did interviews with SIG members, they know about pragmatics, discourse analysis, and conversation analysis, and of course how they teach English is related to what they have been doing with their research. T5 realized that discourse analysis is something what he was teaching in actual context. And personal background, T3 shared his experience of himself being learner of Japanese, and he shared some embarrassing miscommunications or mistakes in Japanese, and he felt that as a language learner, that a lot of what I learned was inauthentic. And he said in the interview, his Japanese teachers don't do their job properly. And career background, one of the actually two of the participants have totally different career background outside academia or teaching English. She too has a business background, and she saw many pragmatic failures among Japanese colleagues. My second research question was about methodology that actually they did in EFL classrooms. My second research question was, how do English educators help their students to boost their second language pragmatic competence, and why do they do it that way? There are so many different, seemingly there are so many different approaches in interview data. So I was struggling with the data analysis, but in SLA, there are mainly 3 approaches to teach English: bottom-up approach, top-down approach, and mixed approach. And I thought maybe these methodologies could be divided into 3, and I did it with one exception. I will talk it about I will talk about it later. Bottom-up approach in teaching to pragmatic competence. T6 does like showing authentic materials first, and then let our students discuss and analyze what was wrong based on the basic knowledge of pragmatics as a subject, like speech acts. T3 let his students do task-based task-based approach. So he used task-based approach first, and then he gives informative feedback. I thought it was interesting. It was interesting for me to hear that the difference between informative feedback and corrective feedback in teaching to pragmatic competence by T3. So pragmatics deals with how to polite to others, how to say something in a polite way. And he said that English educators don't have to correct their manners because we are not playing that kind of role, like correcting their manners, but suggesting it, like, for example, this way might sound like soft, this way might sound polite. So informative feedback is better than corrective feedback. That is what T3 shared with me, and I was I thought I want to share this with in my research paper. T5 and T8 said they try to give as many chances they try to give their students as many chances for jumping into conversations as possible. So many discussions in their classrooms. And about top-down approach, T4 used textbook first and teach rules for conversations, and then he tested it. He said, and he uses his own golden rules for conversation. The golden rules was a way of explaining a key difference in culture speaking style, and then providing step-by-step ways of overcoming those differences. You have to test it. It has to be a part of the exam. The golden rules is kind of a key term. He teaches rules and cultural differences in words, and also using textbook, and then test it. Mixed approach. T1 and T7 seems to do that, like teach useful expressions first, and then let the students analyze conversation very freely, like discussion spot. T1 said I try to teach like, can you, could you, would you mind, for example, in request without getting too theoretical. And I have also tried teaching more general kind of communication strategies. And T7 said 10% of the lesson should be explicit instruction. I remember that he also said that only in case his students don't understand what they are doing, and he comes in and do some explicit instruction. So I thought it would be something like mixed approach. I'm categorized. So I found one exception in methodologies part, bridge kakomon instruction and pragmatic skill teaching. I found one article related to this. According to Guest in 2008, he compared Senta Shiken, which is a type of Japanese university entrance exam, and he compared it in 1981 and in 2006. And the focus of the test has changed in this period. In 2006, students were required to do many more different things, which often appear in English usage, such as predicting, summarizing, paraphrasing. So according to Guest, it is obvious that Japanese universities' shiken, like exams, has changed, and the applicants have to improve their pragmatic skill for entering universities. And T2 said there are already a lot of pragmatic issues embedded in many examinations. So using kakomon, using examinations preparation can be a good like teaching material for pragmatic skill. Outcomes. So they I asked what kind of like outcomes that they could get from the students, like students' response. T4 said, I have seen a lot of improvement in all the other areas. And T2 also said that I see that their eyes kind of sparkle because her students enjoy learning pragmatic aspects of English. However, T1 said that it has been mixed results, to be honest. They all understood it when we did the activity, then they did the controlled practice. But when it came to more free practice and the tasks, they just couldn't really apply it. So both of the reactions are there in the interview data. And issues still remain. Issues were, my third research question was about issues. What issues related to second language pragmatic competence do English educators think still remain, and how do they approach them? And I found that Japanese cultural and educational elements can be harmful for students in LT pragmatic competence learning. According to Shimizu in 2009, example conversations or explanations in target language textbooks are far different from authentic use. When the language learners accept them as models, it would be natural that learners' verbal behavior in their target language differs from norms in that language. When I read this, I was like, so what did I learn? Like what have I learned in English classrooms? So I was just kind of sad when I read this. Yeah. And T4 also said that, but the lesson itself, that the dialogue itself are very unnatural. Like a lot of textbooks, the reactions are there, but the focus is on the grammar, not on the like interactive elements. So it is kind of urgent thing to be considered. And also Japanese juken system and cultural thing can be harms for students when they learn pragmatic aspect of English. T5 said students just want to be able to pass the entrance exam. So he basically thinks that because of juken system, students don't like need and don't know about pragmatic aspect. T8 T8 told me very interesting example of cultural, like Japanese cultural way of conversation, making conversations. By comparing bowling and basketball. Bowling is turn by turn and slow, and basketball is kind of non-stop action. And probably a lot of countries in the world, they are using English more like basketball. And so then Japanese learners of English, the classroom tends to be like boring. I totally agree with that. Even when I use English, I wait until my interlocutor stops talking, and I will be a speaker, and I will be a listener, speaker, listener, speaker. So it's very like turn by turn and slow. And I apply this way of like making conversation to English conversation. But when I talk with my friends coming from, for example, from Germany or the UK, their way of like doing some conversation is kind of like basketball. So it is completely reflection of me being a very Japanese. And I totally agree with this example. Since pragmatics has two aspects, sociopragmatics and pragmalinguistics, I was wondering, maybe as a learner, as a native speaker of Japanese and learner of English and German, sociopragmatics aspect. So I was wondering how English educators differentiate sociopragmatic aspect and pragmalinguistic aspect in EFL classrooms. And I read a book from Kasper and Rose in 2002. They said grammatical and pragmalinguistic knowledge does not cover socioculturally acceptable verbal behavior in English communications. When Japanese and EFL learners make requests in English conversations, they tend to misuse conditional in the request forms. So from my personal experience as well, I'm kind of always worried about me possibly making sociopragmatic mistakes. Even if I say something in English with a perfect grammar, if I talk about something which can be categorized in taboo topics, this is like a nightmare. So I wanted to know how English educators differentiate these two aspects. But surprisingly, most of the participants said something like, I've never thought too much about that. I don't know that I do, or I don't have a clear and magical answer, or I'm not sure I ever considered that very carefully. So maybe future research can touch this like differentiations, like differences between sociopragmatic aspect of aspect instructions and pragmalinguistics aspect. That was very interesting to know how they think about these two differences. And also T3 said because of lack of data in L2 pragmatics research, teachers don't know about it. Like he said, we don't have a lot of data really, and we need data on how people actually perceive what is pride and what is implied, so that we can really target those areas that are really problematic for learners. So more research in L2 pragmatics will enable teachers aware of pragmatic component in teaching context. This is also one of the issues. The conclusion, value and beliefs, their hope for students to be able to do something with English is basic idea for value of teaching L2 pragmatic competence in EFL classrooms, and also their personal and academic background has a strong connection to their beliefs about like teaching English itself. Methodologies from interview data could be divided into 3 with 1 exception: bottom up, top down, and mixed approach. Issues still remain for something like Japanese cultural communicative style, educational system, knowledge gap in pragmatics, L2 pragmatics research, deviation of sociopragmatic and pragmalinguistic, and lack of teachers' awareness. As pedagogical implication, I have 3 suggestions. I could hear a lot of methodologies that my participants actually did or do in EFL classrooms. So there are a lot of approaches that English teachers can use. So they should be more spread out, I think. And knowing before teaching. So from the interview data and analysis of the data, I found that teachers should know about pragmatics first, and then they can teach. So TESOL certificate program or teacher training course at higher education can contain modules focused on pragmatics and its teaching. I actually finished my TEFL certificate program with Toronto University. I did it online it took me 120 hours, and I did it a couple of weeks ago. And I was hoping that there would be like a lesson or module for pragmatics, but there wasn't. So maybe TEFL or TESOL certificate program or 教職課程 in university can contain modules or lessons related to pragmatics and its teaching. And research and experiments in L2 pragmatics should be more developed so that it will give enough data that can be applied to future L2 pragmatics education in EFL classrooms. And there are a lot of gaps that I couldn't cover and recommendations for further studies. So most of the participants are from English-speaking countries. As I said, they are from the UK, the US, and Canada. And 1 participant is from Japan. So participants can be more varied in their cultural backgrounds. So and also it might be able to compare non-native English teachers and non-native English teachers and native teachers, how they approach when they teach pragmatic competence, I mean. And all participants are SIG members with specific research interests. So participants can be called from different educational contexts, like elementary school, junior high school, high school, but I'm not sure because still it might be difficult as English educators do not know. I wouldn't say they do not know, but most of them might not know about pragmatics. And the concept of beliefs is such complicated. Belief is such huge word. That is what I found through the analysis. So methodologies and issues are often mixed in my analysis. So the way of conducting survey can be altered. Like I thought maybe I could ask like basic questions, something like how many years did you teach English in Japan? Or that like, very basic questions in questionnaire. And then I could do interview so that I might get more like deep answer, or it might help me understand their answers more like deeply. This is these are the references, and you can find the full reference list from this QR code if you read it. I can come back to this page again. Thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation. And please follow me on social media as well. I have Twitter and I use YouTube for practicing my presentations in English. And lately I tried making presentation in German, which is very embarrassing, but I tried it. Yeah, thank you so much.